Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Bikes for Death podcast. As always, my name is Patrick, and I'm your host. And on today's episode, I am talking with John and a little bit of Mira, but mostly we're talking to John, who is the human in the human-dog bike riding, bike adventuring, and bike packing duo that is John and Mira. In 2023, John and Mira became the first ever human and dog team to complete the Tour Divide route. And in 2023, they started on their journey to be the first ever human dog team to complete a world tour by traveling to all 7 continents of the world. I'm sure many of you are familiar with John and Mira. They made a lot of waves last year on the Tour Divide. And he has an excellent YouTube channel and social media following. So many people are aware of John and Mira. And like many of you, I have completely become enamored and have fallen in love with them as a riding pair. And I was really excited to chat with both of them. So on today's episode, the first half of today's episode, we're going to be talking about John and Mira, their relationship, how they got started, as well as talk about some dog packing how-tos. John is an absolute expert in this field. He's been doing it for many, many years and has acquired a vast wealth of knowledge and information through his travels with Mira and with his first dog, Melon. So I wanted to take this opportunity to really dig into some of the how-tos on how to go adventuring, bike packing, bike touring with your dog. I know many of you are dog lovers, and so if you're looking to adventure with your furry friend, I hope that you'll find this episode helpful in getting you started on your journey in the outdoors with your dog. And then the second half of the episode, we're going to be talking about his world tour, what his plans are, where he's at in the process so far, how he goes about planning his route, and we talk about his 2023 Tour Divide run. I truly enjoyed this episode. I think it was a lot of fun. I'm a huge fan of John and Mira, like I said, and I definitely think that we'll be catching up with them throughout their world tour and following along. So that's what we have for you on today's episode. But before we get into it, I'd like to address something that has come up as a result of last week's episode. So on last week's episode, I ran an ad for a bikepacking race that is held in Israel. In response, I received a number of emails expressing concern about my promotion of this event, and I would like to take a moment to address this topic openly now with you. First of all, I'd like to really thank the people who did reach out to express concern and their opinions with me, and really for the manner in which they did so. Every single person who contacted me did so respectfully, and as a human and as just a person behind the microphone, I really appreciated. As a result of their feedback, I decided to remove that ad from the episode and all promotional materials on the internet as well. One of the people that reached out to me said, "All I can hope for my fellow humans is a commitment to continued learning and dialogue." And as a fellow human, a podcaster, and someone who deeply believes in dialogue as a way to educate, inform, and inspire, this really resonated with me. And I also believe that it's okay to make mistakes. Mistakes are a part of everybody's life, and I think it's important that we learn from them and we correct them when possible. So I'd like to speak from the heart for just a second and do my best to address the ad that I ran and the concerns that you all expressed. I think that especially in the context of highly divisive politics and war, it is really important to separate individuals and their hopes, goals, dreams, and passions from the actions of their government. In that vein, I'd like to clarify that the organizer is just a person. He's a bikepacking enthusiast just like you and I, who happens to live in Israel. He is not associated in any way with the government entities or promoting any political ideology. He is simply just a guy who is passionate about promoting bikepacking in his country. And as a fellow event organizer, that's something that I can relate to. I decided to run the ad because I believe that people everywhere deserve the opportunity to decide for themselves when and how they recreate by bike. And I understand that this particular event would not be relevant to many of my listeners, but this is a worldwide podcast, and I do have listeners in that region of the world who bear no responsibility for their government's actions and who, like you and people everywhere, deserve access to bikepacking and the outdoors. So I want you to know that choosing to run that ad was never meant to imply support for the actions of any government or any other entities that are perpetuating war in that region of the world. My focus is and always has been on bikepacking and the individuals around the world who share my passion for this niche little sport. I never intended to create the impression that I was personally supporting the travesties that take place in that part of the world. And I can acknowledge that promoting this event under current circumstances was short-sighted. The war is tragic, it's incomprehensible, and worth being passionate about. My heart is absolutely broken for all the people who are affected by this conflict. To those who contacted me and expressed your concern, I hear you, and I commend you for your passion and convictions. I do care deeply about an immediate resolution to this conflict that ends the carnage and promotes peace and stability across that region. In the future, I will be more mindful of the events that I choose to promote. I am forever open to and grateful for your feedback, and I sincerely apologize to anyone who was negatively affected by the ad. Okay, let's talk bikes. Well, I would like to tell you about another event, one that Bikes or Death is hosting, and that is our second annual Bikepacking Basics Beginner Ride and Clinic, taking place on April 26th through the 28th. This time, Bikepacking Basics is going to East Texas. It's going to be headquartered at the Bullet Grill House in Point Blank, Texas, which is home to the East Texas Showdown. And we are going to be riding on some of the very same roads that made East Texas Showdown so popular. And the format for this year's event is going to be a little bit different. Instead of a 2-day event, we're going to make it a 3-day event. And I'll give you a brief overview of what that's going to look like. So on Friday evening, we're going to get to the Bullet Grill, and we are going to have presentations geared towards bikepacking basics. And the topics that we address are going to be curtailed directly to the people who register and sign up. So what I'm going to do is once everybody has signed up, we're going to email everybody and survey you to find out what topics you are the most interested in learning about. And then we are going to develop a program specific to the needs of the people that are coming. And then on Saturday and Sunday, we're going to have an opportunity to put into practice the things that we learned. We are doing a bike camping trip in the Sam Houston National Forest. We'll leave directly from the Bullet Grill House, and there are actually 2 route options. So we have a route option that's about 42 miles and another one that's 32 miles. So you have a couple options there. But regardless of what route you choose, we're all going to meet at the same camp, which is a primitive camp in the Sam Houston National Forest. And at camp, Bikes or Death is going to provide some beer and some refreshments. And we're going to have a little campfire chat about, you guessed it, bikepacking basics. Maybe talk about some of the things that went right, some of the things that went wrong, what they learned, and just have an open conversation about people's experience on the ride and just bikepacking in general. And then on Sunday morning, we'll load up and we ride back to the Bullet Grill House, probably hang out there, grab some food and a drink, and then we'll say our goodbyes. Registration is open now. We actually opened registration yesterday and had a pretty good little response. I'm happy to say I'm actually really excited about the demographics of the event so far. So real quick, we've had people from 4 states register so far. So obviously we have some people from Texas who registered, but we also have a couple people from Arkansas, a couple people from Florida, and from Washington. So people from all over the country are coming, which is absolutely amazing. That's so cool. And we hope to see more people from across the country. Also, so far, we are sitting at 63% of our attendees are women, which is awesome. I just want to express that my events are open to everyone, especially this one. We really want to make bikepacking and the outdoors accessible to everyone. And so some of the ways that we're doing that with this event are obviously through education, through having a couple route options, but also we will have a support vehicle there to assist. The support vehicle can be there to help you carry gear. If you don't have bikepacking bags, that's no problem. We can put it in the truck. We do encourage people to pack as much stuff as they can and get some experience bikepacking to whatever degree that they can. But there's no shame if you're just getting into it, you don't have the bags, you can throw your stuff in the truck and we'll bring it to camp for you. Likewise, if there's a mechanical, we'll have a mechanic on staff to help with any of that. And if we can't fix your problem, we can load you and your bike up in the truck and get you to camp that way. And the pace of these rides is going to be, as I like to say, pro-slow. We're going to be going slow. We're going to be taking breaks, stops to let everybody get back together. And we will have a ride leader and a ride sweeper on every route so that everybody gets to camp safely. The first time we did this, it was an absolute huge success. And we have learned a lot from that event. And version 2.0 of Bikepacking Basics is going to be even better, and I would love for you to join me. So if you'd like to learn more, of course, I will put the link in the show notes, but also you can find the information at bikesfordeath.com under our events tab. All right, that's all I got for you today, folks. Thanks for hanging in there with me, and now it is time to get to my chat with John and Mira. But first, let's have my friend Miles Arbor kick it off with the Bikes for Death theme song.
You load up your bike, you ride away from home. You could be with your friends or you could be alone. You ride for a day or maybe more. You just love being in the great outdoors. Everything you need is strapped to your bars, including that new pillow you got from Santa Claus. And then you think, oh shit, to yourself. You left that super lightweight tent on the living room shelf. Bikes for death. Bikes for death. Podcast.
All right, let's hop into it.
Cool, man.
John.
Sounds good.
What's your last name, John?
Freeman.
John
It's
Freeman.
spelled just like it sounds. Yeah.
Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. It's a real pleasure and an honor, actually. When you look at who you've had on the podcast, I was like, really? Okay, sure.
Oh yeah, you're an easy yes. You should have been on the podcast a long time ago. Where's Mira right now?
Mira is sitting across from me behind the phone here, taking a nap, but she's
Okay.
right with me. Yeah,
All right.
always. She'll come and visit later, I'm sure.
Okay, yeah. I was hoping we'd like to get a shot of Mira and get her some screen time, since we're going to be talking about her a lot today. But don't wake her up. Don't wake her up.
No. Yeah, she's watching.
So,
yeah.
So let's start off and have you give us just a brief introduction, an overview of what you're doing with Mira, what this big plan is and this goal is. Just give us an overview of what you got going on, what your plans are.
Yeah. So, well, I'm a bike packer, a dog packer. So I travel with my dog, which is Mira. She's a border collie healer or Australian cattle dog cross. So high energy, smart dog, always needs a job. And we are riding around the world. We're doing it a little bit differently, maybe than some people. I mean, that's a fairly common thing, it seems, when you start digging through the internet.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping to go to all 7 continents, 6 of them with Mira. And so we are currently in southern Mexico, just attending to a few things and taking a bit of a break here in Oaxaca. And then we'll be at the end of this month, which is January. We're going to be headed through Chiapas, our final state in Mexico, and off to Guatemala and through Central America. And so it'll go like that for a while, where we're riding and exploring, and mainly on dirt, and really just enjoy the experience of seeing the world at our own pace. It's great. And it's a really wonderful thing doing it with a dog. The amazing thing is that, I'll go through, say, a small village or on market day or anything, and people will see the dog. They'll see Mira and they light up, they smile. And I'm adjacent to that. They're looking just past me. So it's an amazing thing to go through the world where everyone is smiling at you and pointing and commenting and asking questions. So that's been something, it's a little unexpected. And I've been riding with a dog now for about 8 years, a dog previous to Mira. I've done a lot of riding in Spain and many times across the United States, north and south, into Mexico, through Baja, and lots through Western Canada. So it's something that's definitely adapted to both the dogs have and I have too. So it's great. It's awesome.
That's amazing. I had no idea you had another dog before Mira. So you've really been doing this for a long time. Yeah, and we're going to get into all of your travels and what your plans are. But by way of getting to know you a little bit more, what do you do for work? What is your work life like that allows you to, even previous to Mira and this big cycling the world with Mira, you've been doing this a while, man. How are you able to, what's your job that allows you to do this kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's a common question. There's kind of 2 sides to that. So I am trained as an alpine guide with the Association of Canadian Mountain Guides in Canada. I'm also trained and have a lot of work time as a rope access technician, rope access supervisor. So if people have seen, on TV or YouTube or in person, someone working on, say, a wind turbine or washing windows, those are the techniques that we use. But I work primarily in oil and gas or other industrial settings from rope. And I do some safety consulting on movie sets if they're shot in the mountains or high angle terrain, and resource exploration. So that could be different minerals, but again, in mountainous terrain. And so I can work contracts, chunks of time, and then not work. So it appears like I don't work, but I do in these big chunks. And then now it's been kind of this evolution because, I'm traveling quite a bit, and I'm trying to find a way where I can continue the travel and not stop and go back primarily to Canada to work. So there's a greater presence online, with Instagram and YouTube primarily, and making videos, sharing our trips. I mean, we're seeing beautiful places and we're having interesting interactions, and I have a happy, energetic dog, and that's entertaining and I hope for people, and so they can see our YouTube channels. And then along with that, in preparation, and I'm sure we'll talk about it for the Tour Divide, I started working very closely with another Canadian, a veterinary surgeon, a consulting vet, and we are starting a new website, which is basically designed to provide inspiration and education for people that own dogs or that have dogs that want to do different adventures. And that is called dogpacking.com. So there's kind of a few things that we're trying to, eke out a living. But the real magic is that I live a very simple life. You know, I have very few possessions. They're in storage. I don't have a house. I don't have an apartment. I don't have a car. You know, I'm in a country, Mexico, where the food costs, accommodation costs are less than in Canada or United States or in Europe. And so I can stretch the dollars that I do earn pretty far. And I try to take care of my bike, and obviously I take care of my dog, and live a simple life. So that's how I'm able to make it work so far. And hopefully I can continue on doing these things because I love it. It's great.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's what I hear time and time again from people who want to prioritize traveling, in whatever format, seeing the world. You have to make it a priority and figure out ways to juggle different sources of income. You may or may not know, I started the podcast primarily as a way to offset my own travel cost. I was traveling all over just the United States at that time. And I was like, man, how can I write off all this as a business expense? And I was like, I'll just start a podcast. I'll go into wherever, I'll interview someone there. And then the whole thing was a podcasting trip, you know? And so I get it, you know, I'm trying to juggle and figure out ways to make the thing that you really want to do a real feasible and attainable thing. And it usually takes a lot of juggling. It's not most people don't have a job that'll just allow them to go and do this kind of stuff. So it takes a lot of juggling in the background.
It does. But sorry to cut you off there, but enough people are doing it like yourself. It's a good example. We can kind of learn from these things, and I think there's an opening for people to live a slightly different life than maybe we thought when we were young.
It's such an important thing that I like to try to promulgate. And it's why I asked a lot of people, like, what do you do for a living that allows you to do this? Because it is getting to know you, but it's also like helping people understand what it takes, and also giving them inspiration to be like, oh yeah, you can do this too, but it takes a lot of sacrifice to do it. You know, you got to live a really simple life, and got to probably have a threshold for inconsistent income and that kind of stuff. But if it's worth it to you, you can have this kind of life. And I agree, it's not the go to school and get a degree and buy a house and 2.5 kids and, you know, just the typical, at least in America, the typical life plan that you're kind of presented with all through school. And it's reflected in the conversations with your parents and at school and with your friends, and where are you going to college and when are you getting married and all this kind of stuff. And so it's important that it's not just like, oh, look at John and Mira doing this, but like also a little peek behind how you make it actually work, you know? So I was going to ask you what came first, Mira or bikepacking? But what was your first dog's name?
Melon.
Melon?
He was a border collie. Yeah. Melancholy.
Melancholy. Nice.
Yeah.
So were you first a dog owner that got into bikepacking, or were you a bikepacker that became a dog owner? Or like, where was the confluence of dogpacking meet?
Yeah. I mean, it goes back a long time. I mean, I've had dogs in the family and myself since I was a young kid. And there was definitely a long period where I didn't have one. You know, I just couldn't afford the cost, and I wasn't, you know, I was racing bicycles actually, so there was no time for that. I think probably the bikes came first. I'm old enough to remember when mountain bikes became first commercially available, and I borrowed one from a local shop and took it out for a ride. And what we call bikepacking now, I thought that's what they were for initially. Like that just made sense to me, and then I quickly learned, well, no, you're supposed to race these things. So that took over a time took over my life for quite a while. But then when I wanted to go, you know, bike touring, I just didn't want to leave my dog behind. And I did some Google searching like we do to try and figure out, you know, how this is done. And for off-road riding, you know, typically the bikepacking style, mainly dirt, there weren't really any examples of how to do that. And so, I just figured it out. did a couple of trials and sort of settled on a single wheeled trailer and packed it all up and learned how to get my dog to Europe. And we made a flight to Spain, and we spent 6 months there riding around and learning how to do what we call dogpacking now.
Yeah, I love it. So let's talk a little bit more about Mira. Give us an introduction to Mira. You already told us that she's a border collie mix. Is that right? A border collie
Yeah,
healer.
That's right.
Border collie healer. When you were thinking about getting another dog, were you thinking about a specific breed that you believe would work well as a dog packing dog? I have to imagine at this point you're like kind of committed to this lifestyle. So you're thinking, okay, I need a dog that can be up to the physical task of what I'm wanting to do. What was your thought process there?
Yeah, it's kind of all those things and some other things too. I mean, I think any dog can work to do this kind of thing. You have to be willing to adapt to the dog. The dog's going to set the tone of how far they can run and how much they weigh and so how that affects. I had actually tragically lost my previous dog hit by a car, and I was thinking, well, maybe I don't want to have a dog in my life for a while because that's going to be simpler travel. Honestly, it's the logistics of going through an airport or just day to day. It adds to it. It adds the weight and all those kind of things. But I've always had border collie or border collie cross type dogs. They're super active. They're intelligent. They're pretty loyal. They're curious. So they're a lot of fun. And so it just made sense. And I came across I wasn't sure if I would get a border collie or a healer this time, and came across. I saw an ad online, and I thought, I'll just go out and take a look at to this ranch and take a look to see what they have. And of course, that's never going to end without a puppy in your arms.
Yeah,
and so she was 3 months old, which is the youngest that you can fly. At least into Europe with, because of the vaccination requirements.
Okay.
And so as a puppy, we went back to Europe and that was really hard actually, because she didn't know all the commands of an older dog, and she just got heavier and heavier and heavier as a puppy. And then she couldn't really run very far, very fast. That's a good way to injure your dog if you start push them too hard, too early. And so, we've just kind of created this life together, where I don't think of traveling without her. I rarely go anywhere without her. And so it's been great. Yeah.
How old is she now?
She's 6 years old. So she's, her entire life, she's been doing this. Yeah.
Yeah. This is mind blowing. So, one of my questions was like, I had to assume that there was a lot of training and practice rides and all this before you decided to, kind of really take on a big trip. But instead, you took a puppy and taught her from the very beginning, like, hey, this is your life. It seems like. So how well did she take to that? I assume adapted pretty well.
Yeah, I think really well. I mean, it's also for the human in the equation to be able to adapt as well. I mean, to know if she's going to be okay inside of a tent, or she's going to jump outside of the basket or the trailer, or how she reacts to other dogs or other people. And like with anyone that has had dogs in their life, just really clear and consistent boundaries for the dog really help them. And so, it really did work out pretty well. I do remember being frustrated, because she's a puppy, like they take a lot, they need a lot of energy, directed towards them and attention. and they're not like the dog you had previously that knew everything. So that was tough. But yeah, no, it was great. And it's been good ever since. And it just gets better and better and better. And she, it's not like I'm forcing her to do it. She loves it. If I move the bicycle and she hears a freewheel move, or I put on my shoes or anything like that, she comes running. She's excited to go. She gets to run. She gets to jump in and out of the basket and, explore the world. It's like, and then when we're on the bicycle, it's like her having her head out the car window all day long. So it's pretty awesome from a dog standpoint. It's hard to get much better, I think.
Yeah.
So,
anyone who has spent any time watching your YouTube channel or follows you on Instagram, but really like your YouTube channel is great. You really get a sense for how well Mira is enjoying the trip, but also like your love for that dog is unparalleled. Like you genuinely love that dog and take such excellent care of her. And it's really it's a beautiful relationship. I really enjoy watching y'all out there on your adventures together. I'm wondering though, like, as we're talking about, training a dog to be a dog packing dog, like some of the concerns that enter my mind are, what if she jumps out and wants to chase wildlife, and if she's leashed up, she might pull you off your bike, or maybe run into the woods and you lose her. Or I had a dog. I actually had a Australian Shepherd. She went with my ex-wife in a divorce, but I tried to take that dog just trail riding. I was trying to teach it to be a trail dog, and it would always bite my tires. And one time, like, bit my tire and caused it to go flat. And I'm like, okay, well that was, and they're herding dogs, so it makes sense to trying to herd the bike the whole time. So were there any like issues with that, or did Mira just kind of figure it out pretty quickly?
Yeah. I mean, I've been pretty lucky, to be honest, but, that being said, her safety is my priority. And I'm, it's kind of you to say that you like the relationship between myself and Mira comes across in the videos. It's genuine. So I'm glad that it comes across that way. But yeah, the safety is a big thing. I mean, being able to make sure I don't run her too hard and injure her. She's exposed to different things, say, here in Mexico, fleas, ticks, other internal parasites. And then, the basket actually sits about 1 meter off the ground, so about 3 feet. And she's in and out of the basket a tremendous number of times, especially, if the terrain is up and down. She weighs 40 pounds. So if I can unload 40 pounds from the bicycle on a steep hill, I'm going to do it. And so, I've learned some techniques over time and sort of, try to think of them in advance before she gets injured. And so she wears a harness, just a regular dog harness, that connects. The connection point is sort of mid back. And so I give her a little tug when she goes to jump up into the basket. And I also ease off the landing impact when she jumps out of the basket. But she is really well controlled in terms of commands. I can reach back on the leash and she'll know it's time to jump out, but I can have her wait. Or if we're on single track trail, I can give her the command behind and she'll stay behind the bicycle so that I can have the interactions with, maybe people on the trail or other animals or livestock, that kind of thing. So it's, and then, here there's lots of unleashed dogs that make a lot of racket and bark, and some of them are aggressive. That happens everywhere in the world. And so just being able to manage those kind of things are super important. And it's those kind of questions. That's why we've started dogpacking.com. But yeah, it's the main thing. And so if there's, if I think something's going to cause injury to her, or there's some kind of situation, I'll do my best to avoid it or control it or somehow mitigate, those situations, because this doesn't work if I allow my dog to be injured, So it's, it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, that not only injures your dog, but it creates a situation for you where you might be in the middle of nowhere and you need to care for your dog. And I mean, that becomes an emergency situation pretty quickly. So I think it's better for all parties.
And it's also important for me too. I'll make sure that I control my speed or just be a bit more cautious sometimes because I don't want to get injured because she's relying on me as well. If I end up, in the hospital or needing care from other people, what happens to her? So it's if you think about it too much, it'll hurt your head. It's a little stressful.
Yeah. My relationship with this kind of concept is, taking my kids bike packing. And whenever you said like you're kind of living adjacent to like all the attention being on them. And I have a tandem bike and then I have a trailer bike that attaches on the back. And so all three of us are like in a train going, even if we just ride around the block or, if we go on a trip, all eyeballs are on you. People are pointing and looking but like taking kids in the outdoors comes with a lot of risk and you have to maintain them and yourself. And so that's kind of the way I've never taken a dog packing before, but I can kind of relate to it. I think kids and dogs, there's obviously like a lot of similarities. There's some differences. Whenever my kids poop in the woods, I have to hold them up, so nothing touches them, and I'm their toilet. And, you don't have to do that with Mira. So
yeah. But you're right. And I think there's different levels you can go at, but probably your view of having it, going out with your kids is my same thing with Mira, is that the benefits of it far outweigh the risks normally, right? I mean, they're learning about the world and they're interacting with things and they're being stimulated and you can just see the joy and the memories that you create. I mean, it's really worthwhile. And with a bit of forethought, you can manage the risks, where you go and when you go and the equipment you bring and the pace that you go at. You just need to be sensible about these things.
Yeah. I can imagine, I mean, there are so many people who are just fanatics for dogs, dog lovers, specifically probably their dogs. Some people, all dogs. I saw the bumper sticker yesterday, tell your dog I said hi. I mean, people love their dogs. And I can imagine you as inspiration. You're the only person I know that really does this. I don't know if there's a small community I'm not aware of, but I can imagine you have a lot of people who are, hey, how do I do it? And as we're talking, it's very obvious, like there are a lot of logistical things and practical things that you have to consider to be successful. And so I wanted to take a little time and go through some of the things maybe that you've done and you've learned to make this successful and be able to take on a big challenge like a world tour. And I think a good place to start with that is with your bike. Like, what bike are you riding? And maybe you can talk about the basket and how you set the bike up for dog packing.
Yeah. So I have used a couple of different setups, but I've used a trailer and a variety of different mountain bikes. And I think because I'm mainly riding on dirt, and that works for a lot of people. There's a couple of different single wheel trailers out there, and they track really well for single track. And then they're reasonably light and they're pretty low to the ground, so the dog can get in and out.
And you're keeping the weight off the bike. So obviously, I know from having kids, like when you add a person to your bike that you're on versus a trailer, and the trailer adds a weight too, and there's a whole dynamic there, but it's a different riding experience for sure.
Yeah, it's not all sitting on the back wheel, and so like equipment balance, handling is less affected by having that weight there than if you just start piling it on to a regular bicycle. But over time, what I discovered was that, having that extra piece of equipment, the extra wheel to manage and those sort of things, I just felt like, and then also how it rides, particularly off-road when it's unloaded, the rear wheel of the trailer will bounce quite a bit. particularly with the Bob style trailer. There's a company, I think they're based in California, Farfarer Trailers, which mounts higher at the seat post. I think it bounces less, but they don't always track as well. So it gets pretty rowdy, these wheels bouncing around behind the bike. And then even, this is a real niche inside baseball kind of thing, but trying to get that all inside of a small European elevator was a bit of a pain sometimes. Yeah. And I got to thinking, and so also used to make a bike called the Blackborough. And since COVID, they've, all these companies have sort of consolidated their manufacturing, just a few little items, and maybe they just didn't sell enough of them. But I tell you, I get enough requests now for where I can find a Salsa Blackborough, that they could probably bring it back. So I had to
sponsor you in the process.
Yeah, well, actually, that's interesting because I am working with another company currently to do a new version of the bicycle that I'm currently riding. So this has been an evolution. It's basically a mid-tail bike, which now we start to see in popularity with Jay Peterberry and his Unearthed. Yeah, exactly. And so what that really allows for is this basket on the back of the bike to be over the axle and to be pretty well balanced. So the bike handles pretty well when it's loaded with Mira and her food and my equipment. It's basically 40 or 50 pounds more than an average person's bikepacking setup, and yet still handles pretty well when it's unloaded, which is a big ask for a bicycle. So I've had this evolution. I think a good entry point for people is still the trailer, because you don't have to buy a special bike, and you can take it on and off. And for if you want to just go ride the single track with your dog, you ride to an area that's known for that, you could do that as well. But for our use, this custom made mid-tail fat bike, actually, although I'm riding sort of a normal width, like a sort of a 2.6, 2.3, 2.4 width tire with pinion gearbox and Gates carbon belt on it. So it's kind of a unique bike for sure. That's really adaptable to. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was wondering, do you have to run midtail, do you have to run belt drive on a midtail? Or I was wondering why belt drive on your bike? Because I could see with the longer chainstay, the shifting might not be as good. I'm not really sure, but why belt drive? Because I noticed in a couple of your videos, and one of them, it's squeaky, so you put soap on it, which I thought is a great tip to lessen the squeaking. But also, if they break, that's not a part that most bike shops are going to carry. So I assume you're carrying extra belts. I was curious, what precipitated your decision to go with belt drive?
Yeah, I mean that's really a simple one. It's so just to back up a little bit, a chain derailleur system that's the super common regular setup, whether it's a 1x or a 3x, doesn't matter. Those will all work on a midtail. It's not so much of an issue, and the shifting these days is still really crisp, even with long cables if it's manual, and I'm sure with Access or Di2, it's super crisp. It doesn't really much matter. The belt and the pinion drive for me was just about cost and durability. During COVID, I think that particular year I rode something approaching 30,000 kilometers in the year. And at that time, I was riding a SRAM 1x system. Chains were not available very easily, even though that's a very durable chain. So, and they're expensive. I mean, I think now there's something just under $70 US, but then the rear cluster is several $100s, bottom brackets, and they just wear out is the thing. And so with the pinion, I can get 10,000 kilometers in between oil changes. I can even push that quite a bit. And they just keep going and going and going. And I can, I have a much wider range of gears. I can shift without pedaling while I'm stopped. So, you you can keep your stance stable coming into a little dip and change gears instead of having to spin the pedals very quickly to get into an easier gear, or the alternative is to shift under a heavy load and your bike's already weighted. So that's a tough combination. And I need to get maybe Mira out of the basket. So there's a lot of things going on there. Whereas this, I just turn my wrist. The belts, they last longer than a chain. They do squeak. That's one of the things that happens in really dusty conditions. Mm-hmm. But like you said, a little bit of soap, a little sprinkle of water, and they quiet right up. They last longer. They're pretty light. So I just carry a spare one. And if I do break one, and it's pretty rare, but they do. I mean, I'll ride them till they break as opposed to changing them. Whereas a chain, you might measure the pitch change in your chain with a little, little device and swap it out. It's typical, like in the Tour Divide, people swap them, mid race because they're wearing out, and then they're going to spend less money on the gear cluster. But for our long-term travel, the belt, Gates belt works amazing, and paired up with the pinion system, or you could use roll off, but I like the pinion with the weight centrally located and, wide range of gears, and super easy to service, with the oil change. So it's great, but it's not required. A simple straight up regular gear system will work just fine.
Yeah. I'm admittedly not the most knowledgeable whenever it comes to belt drive. So I didn't realize that you could shift them without turning the pedal, which is really interesting. I can imagine the benefit. Also the benefit of just the variety of weights that you're experiencing on your ride, specifically when you add Mira to the bike versus not, that's 40 pounds, which you can obviously see the benefit of having a wider gear range. What is the gear range as it relates to like a typical 1x11 or 1x12 setup? Do you happen to know?
Yeah, it's a little confusing even to me, and I use the thing. They say it's 600% difference, but basically what it feels like, if I had a typical SRAM 1x12 speed, say 10 to 52 or whatever, I think it is. It's kind of like having another gear easier and another gear at the other end harder, and the steps are uniform, which is also really nice. So typically what I find with the SRAMs is that they're basically into 3 sections. So you have gearing that's quite close down at the small end of the cluster, and then there's slightly bigger steps through the middle section of the gearing. And then the last 2 or maybe 3 are really big steps between it. So it's really nice and predictable. I can just, the indexing happens within the gearbox, not at the shifter. So it's very easy to set up. And there's no adjustment required once you have the cable tension, just to give it enough space to move around. That is kind of nice. I have a gear, for downhill with a little tailwind, and I have a gear for a heavily loaded bike at altitude on a steep, loose dirt slope. So it's a real wide range to play with. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I've been paying real close attention to how you set up your bike, and it's very curious because you're not just carrying your stuff, which I think most people listening to podcasts are pretty familiar with what you need to take on your bike to sustain your life and maintain your bike and all that kind of stuff. But what additional things are you taking just for Mira? And let's start there.
Yeah, with Mira, obviously it's food. So primarily that's kibble, the kind of stuff that you would buy, no matter where you are in the world, pretty much. And then the interesting thing is in Canada and US, the smallest bag typically available or commonly available is about 2 kilograms. So somewhere at 4 or 5 pounds. And so I try to time that. But sometimes you can't. There's a big gap where there's no stores, but I still have, a couple of pounds of food. So I have to buy that bag. And so there's that food. Her medications, her monthly medications. So that's for flea and tick and internal parasites, heartworm, and the like. And I have a medication. It's a simple 1 tablet, and I just do it once a month, and that covers her for all those needs. And then some nail clippers. Most of her nails get worn down. There's no problem, but the little dew claws in the front, I give those little trim. A little brush to help keep her coat looking healthy. And then I have a little toothbrush that fits under my finger so I can give her keep her teeth and her gums healthy. And then Rex Specs goggles.
Yes, so like I want to talk about the goggles.
Yeah, they're pretty cool actually. Certainly when you're moving, when we're standing still, they look a bit much. But I wear sunglasses all the time. Protects my eyes from the sun and the wind and the grit. Sounds like you might actually have a sunglass problem from what I came across in one of the podcasts. But it's just protect our eyes. And there's nothing. And it just makes me sad when I see an older dog and their eyes have gone cloudy or they've been injured, sticking their head out the window, or they've been struck by something. So just a piece of protection for her. And then I also have some dog booties, some very lightweight ones that are made by a company that makes them for dog mushers, primarily. Dogbooties.com. It's a little cottage industry shop, and they're super cheap. They're like $3 a paw, and it just helps with maybe cactus thorns, or if you're in a climate where they're salting the roads or sidewalks, keep that off there. She doesn't usually need to wear them, but it's mostly for the cactus, any of the sharp kind of stuff. But if she was to get an injury, I could patch up the paw and then put this over as a cover. If I don't have vet wrap or anything for the paw. So it's, that's kind of it. And then I have a few extra things within my first aid kit, like vet wrap, for example, which is just like a self-adhesive sort of tape to keep gauze or other things on, and it has a bit of a bitter taste, so a dog's not likely to lick at it and chew on it.
Smart.
And then that's kind of it. And maybe some. I have a pain killer for her, gabapentin, and then a few other items that my veterinarian has recommended and provided for us to carry along, but not a lot of stuff.
I know this varies based on distance and the climate you're in and all this, how much food, how much water. But you mentioned Mira weighs 40 pounds. Do you have a sense for how much additional weight or how much total weight you're carrying whenever you're loaded up with her food, her water, all of her stuff and everything, just everything you need to go bikepacking, dogpacking to be specific?
Yeah, it's about 50 pounds, I would say. Probably sometimes a little bit over if we need more water, and then a little bit under. And I was shocked to discover on the Tour Divide, I was riding adjacent to another competitor during the Grand Depart, and her whole bike loaded was less than just Mira and her stuff.
Yeah,
it was less. It was something just over 40 pounds was her setup. So
which you can do if you're going faster.
Well, yeah, but I can't go that much faster.
Exactly. Well, no, you can't.
Yeah.
I was thinking though, like, have you ever thought about entering a race? Now, you've got to be in just phenomenal shape, carrying around all that extra weight. You've done this for many, many years. You've got to be in pretty doggone good shape, to use a little pun there. Have you ever thought about entering a race now without Mira, just to see how fit you really are?
I mean, I've thought about it for sure. But I would honestly, I don't know. I've thought about it, but I've never pulled the trigger on it. It's a specific type of fitness. I can, I'm carrying definitely way more weight. I'm not sure how it would translate. Sometimes I think it would be great, to the kind of watts I can put out, because I've been carrying this heavy load. And then what I've experienced too, like I've often ridden with like a close friend of mine, Ryan Van Duzer, who's on YouTube, that many of your listeners would know his videos.
I think he was on the podcast episode number 98. I think he was on the show.
Oh, wicked. Yeah. He's great. He's a high energy guy. He's awesome.
And I watched all of y'all's videos together, and your Oaxaca Dirt Tour. I watched the whole thing. So yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, it's a lot of fun. And so he's kind in that he'll slow down when Mira jumps back into the basket, because I do stop the bike for her to jump back in so that she doesn't miss. And it's a sizable jump. But he'll soft pedal or stop, if need be for us. But generally we're able to ride at a pretty close to the same pace. And Ryan's pretty fit. He does, ultra marathons and runs mountain, and he's, an experienced and skilled cyclist, so that I can keep a pace that he's not waiting for me all the time. That's an indication to me that I'm, fairly strong on the bike. But I got no illusion. I mean, I'm 53 now. I have raced bikes in the past. I have done a lot of other different sports at a fairly high level. But, if we're talking about the events that are going on these days, these guys are younger, they're fitter, they're focused on these events. So I think I would probably just be a little disappointed, and I would also miss the partnership of having Mira with me.
Yeah,
it just wouldn't have the same appeal. So it's great.
What break down, like, what is it like to specific, like, be on the road or the trail with a dog? Like, when is she jumping out? When is she riding in the basket? How often are you having to attend to her needs as far as food and water and stopping for all these things? Like, what is, because that's an approach to bike packing that we're not used to. I mean, what are your expectations? How do you set appropriate expectations for going on a bike packing trip with a dog? Because we're used to maybe maintaining 10, 12, 14 mile an hour average. You're not going to do that with a dog. So can you give us an idea of like what that actually looks like?
Yeah. I'm not far off that average, I think.
Wow. All right. You are strong.
but it really depends on the terrain. The easiest terrain for us, just like with everyone, is flat. And for that, Mira is mainly in the basket. The basket is kind of that size where she's snugly fit in there. It's really well padded. That's a key thing. So the bottom of the basket inside, and then the rim is also padded so that she's comfortable in there. And then she'll stand up in that. She's super well balanced. But what she'll do is she'll lean against my lower back. So she's got almost a fifth point of contact, and we'll both know, how she's reacting depending on, if I'm using the brakes or accelerating or turning, that kind of thing. But she's basically surfing along as in the basket as she stands up. And so on the flats, it's pretty straightforward. And only if she wants to stretch her legs do I have her out and going beside me. If it's just a big climb or a super steep climb, then she jumps out of the basket, and she does that on command. I'll reach back and grab the leash, like I said before, just to ease the landing onto the ground. And so, then she'll just trot beside me. And then on the steep hills, I'm going at a pace where, she can run at 30 kilometers an hour on the flats, but, just trotting beside me, if we're doing, 8 or 10 kilometers an hour, sorry, I don't know the conversion so easily. But you're going up a hill. She's just trotting beside me. She's comfortable. When we get to the top of the hill or the rise, then I stop the bicycle, and then she'll jump into the basket again. And I just give a little tug, a well-timed tug, to help her clear the lip. And then off we go. We go again. So that's where it's nice to be able to change gears without having to pedal. If I get up to the hill and it's time to go off the end, I can just go into a bigger gear and off we go. Or if there's, other terrain, or I've misjudged it, I can change the gears with the extra load. And then she'll just be comfortably in the basket. If it's smooth terrain on asphalt, she's laying down. And if it's a bit bumpier or more technical, she'll stand up. And like I said, she'll lean against me. The terrain, or if it's really rough going down or single track, then I'll have her out of the basket. My brakes can only take so much. I have, 4-piston brakes and large rotors. But I mean, add that kind of weight and things heat up pretty fast. Even though mine do very, very well, I have, aftermarket rotors from Swiss Stop and these great pads that don't tend to fade, but it's a lot to ask of them. But it's the terrain that other riders wouldn't really notice that I find super hard. It's sort of, low angle, like rail grade type stuff, 3, 4, 5, getting into maybe 8%. That for me is hard, because knowing when I should have her out of the basket or back in the basket, and then to have that extra weight grinding up that's where I notice the biggest difference. And that's tough. And there's a lot of that on the Tour Divide.
Yeah, as part of the dilemma there is knowing, how long is this climb going to last? Is it worth, unloading or loading her back up, or just slogging it out? Is that part of the dilemma?
Yeah, that really is the decision matrix there. And then it's also, what part during the day it happens. Like, if we're just traveling like we are regularly, it's not so bad. I can either slow down or have her out of the basket. And we could always, if there's a lot of climbing, I could always shorten the day, for example. It's not so much of an issue. But, if you're on the clock, for example, then it's a bit more complex. You need to manage your dog's output as well as your own, and try and find that balance. How long do you keep them in? Do you get them out? And then also knowing that I'm going to stop the bike for her to get back in. I slow down, stop, and then accelerate. That actually ends up being a chunk of time. And so, when I'm riding with someone like Ryan, for example, it's super awesome that they slow down at that moment, because otherwise they're 20 meters ahead of us if they just keep the pace going.
Oh, yeah.
So it's so that all kind of plays into it. Just the managing her in and out of the basket. And it probably happens, a lot of times with sort of rolling terrain. Maybe it could be 100 times in a day that she's in and out of the basket. So it's a really regular occurrence that's happening constantly. Yeah.
One other thing that I was thinking of that I'm curious. We all go into unfamiliar towns and have to leave our bike outside of a restaurant or a grocery store while we go inside. You got Mira, so how do you? Yeah. You don't want anyone taking your bike. You definitely don't want anyone taking Mira. What do you do when you go into towns, and how do you manage that?
You know what? That part's super easy. It's amazing.
Okay.
I leave her. She's comfortable in the basket. It's like her little home. And I just loop the leash I have goes around my waist, so I'm not hanging on to the leash, and it's got a little bit of a bungee to it. And so I just take that loop and I put it through the back wheel, and that stops the bike from rolling one way or the other. And she just chills in the basket. She's safe from other dogs. And I have this theory, and I don't have any reason to disbelieve it, which is, I think you can't hold these two conflicting emotions or thoughts or vibrations, however you want to characterize it, at the same time. So if someone's a dog lover and they want to come and say hello to Mira, they will. And she's really friendly and she's not going to bite someone, and she loves to get the attention. And those interactions are going to be fine.
She's also not being like super protective of her property and her home and her place and all that kind of stuff. No, I was just in a parking lot at a grocery store recently. Someone had their dog in the back with the window rolled down, which you shouldn't do, but that's what they did. And the dog was just, and that's common dog behavior.
Yeah, it really is. But this is the thing that I think if someone's mentality is, I want to steal some of the stuff off my bike, or steal the bike, they think dogs are aggressive. They think dogs are dangerous. They're guard
Protectors.
dogs.
Yeah.
And she might pick up on that. I don't know that she will. I mean, she'll bark at people that come to our campsite at night if that kind of thing does happen. But yeah, I think it just, people see the dog and they're like, I'm not going to get bit if they're coming in to steal something. But I don't think you can, like, it's hard to have those two, kind of like, it's like a love and a hate kind of thing, however you want to characterize it. I don't think you can hold them at the same time. You can't be nice to the dog and then do something mean or despicable and steal from those people, from that, that thing. So it's like my security system's just engaged. I leave her in the basket, the bike's there, and I leave it so it's visible for people, in front of the shop, in front of a grocery store. These little tiendas in Mexico where I am now, I go inside, or if I'm in a restaurant, and then often, I can sit so I can see what's going on there. And I'm looking for, some shade for her to be parked in. So far, yeah, knock on wood, it's, not a single even thing where I've felt uncomfortable about it. So that part is really useful. And I think she's safe is the other thing, like from other dogs, for them to get up, she's in a position of power over top of them. So it works out pretty good.
Yeah. So she is a protector. She's not doing it necessarily through barking and growling, but just by being sweet, and people fall in love with her. She's protecting herself and your belongings. It actually makes a lot of sense. What about her? Most dogs are going to want to follow their owner. How did you train her to just stay in the basket? Because I always watch it like when you were with Ryan Van Duzer on the Oaxaca Dirt Tour, the Grand Dirt Tour. It seemed like she was out in the basket on the bike outside of a restaurant. There was a girl that was petting her, and y'all went in and you ate and you had your whole meal, and then came outside. The girl was still petting her. But does Mira ever want to just chase you inside, or did you train her to just hang out?
No. If she's off leash, she's focused on me, pretty intently. So she'll follow. But I think this is a key thing that maybe, I don't know whether people realize it or not, but I think it's really important to say is that a well-trained dog, a dog that has real clear boundaries for that dog and is trained and will behave, follow the commands. They don't speak our languages. They just know the sounds, right? Unless they're border collies, of course, and then they probably know 300 words. But it means you can take them more places and you're less stressed. So it's a better life for them. I definitely made a point of training her recall, for her to come when called and to stay or to wait when commanded to do so. And that allows me to do that. If my dog wasn't behaved the way she is, it would make this really tough. Whether going through an airport or into a hotel or Airbnb or just someone's home, or, going through markets. Like I was riding through a market town the other day, and people are looking, and it's all close proximity, all the vendors and the people. And if she wasn't able to manage that, it would be really tough. So I've spent the time training her in the younger years, and I just make sure that I keep it really, it's enforced and it's clear. And I have to do it for her. I have to make sure that I'm consistent, with the commands and with the expectations for her.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm glad you touched on that. It's actually something that I didn't quite occur to me when I was preparing for this chat. But obviously having a very, very well-trained dog that respects you and y'all have a great relationship is probably really vital to be able to do this type of travel with your dog. Any good resources out there for the training dogs? Where to go for?
It will be live in the springtime, but dogpacking.com will be a great resource. We have an excellent dog trainer who's writing articles for us, and we'll provide some stuff. I think in your wherever you live, there are people that make a living providing dog training advice and courses. I think they're a good resource to look up to as well. I know there's definitely some apps and some some people on social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Cesar Milan, esque type trainers out there. So yeah, I think the key is that I would suggest for people is a style that you feel comfortable with. I definitely am a big fan of the positive reinforcement for the dogs, and just to put the time into it. You put the time into searching through the internet for the latest titanium piece for your bicycle. I think you should put at least that much time into the consistency for training with your dog. If you're going to have a dog, actually, it's an investment into your happiness and theirs too.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's a responsibility as a citizen in a community to, have your dog well trained and to have control and command of your dog. We see instances where owners aren't as responsible, and it causes problems. And I think that's a responsibility that we should adhere to, just as members of the world community.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that. I try to pass through the world, and I take responsibility for my own actions. I try to be prepared, and dog training is just simply one of those things that makes the whole experience that much better. It's there's and it's just so stressful if you're around a poorly behaved dog. It's stressful for the dog, it's stressful for the dog owner, and for all of those people that have to interact with it. It's also not great. So yeah, I definitely think, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I think partly, or at least sharing our story a little bit, is just I'm hoping that we're a pretty good example of how you can experience different things. It doesn't have to be bikepacking. Like dogpacking could mean going on a paddleboard. It could mean going to the dog park. It could mean you're walking with your kids to the grocery store, and you're going to pick up some a few items, or even in a car. Like when I've had a car, I had a small little van, and the dog was in a dog crate and well secured. I think I don't want them to be a projectile if I get into an accident. So it's sort of a holistic way of looking at my time shared with a dog.
Yeah. I think you do an excellent job, and it really shows through your videos and your content that you're a very caring and a conscious and a responsible dog owner that is doing it out of a place of like genuine love and care, and and all the things that you're talking about. It's very sincere, the way that comes across, for sure.
Okay.
Dogpacking.com. When does that launch, and how the heck are you creating a website and creating all this content while also you're about to kick off your world tour? I don't even know how you're going to do that, but when can people expect to dig into this topic even at a more granular level?
Yeah, thanks. So that is the web address, dogpacking, all one word, .com. Typically that term has been, an amalgamation of backpacking or bikepacking with a dog. Myself and my partner, Krista Halling, who's a orthopedic board certified veterinary surgeon, and I are collaborating on this website. The idea is that term is no longer just limited to those two sports. It's basically every activity under the sun, and we want it to be an inspiration hub. So maybe the kind of things that Mira and I are doing, or people go surfing with their dogs, or paddleboarding, or canny cross is getting really popular now, where it's like skijoring but running. Or I even saw a dog human triathlon today, and I think it was in France, or at least the person with the video was speaking French. And So all kinds of things, or, frisbee or dog obedience. So there's that component, which is the fun stuff that inspires us to get out, and at any level is what we would say. And then also a lot of education. So already we have articles. Some people live in areas where there's lots of snakes. So we have an article on dealing with snakes and possibility of snake bites, or if a dog gets a little scrape, how to use things like they might not be aware of, but raw honey and wound management, or the risks and dangers of algae blooms in water, depending on where you are in the world. That can be an issue, or taking your dog to high altitude or high elevations. If you're traveling to see your friends in Colorado, could be an example. I know people, they're going to have an effect by that, but what to expect from your dog is smaller, and maybe they're not going to say, hey, my appetite's not so good, or I have a headache, or this kind of thing. So a lot of science-based information, and we're working with a variety of vet specialists, whether they're ophthalmologists or surgical specialists or rehab specialists, and different NGOs as well. So a lot of science-based information and all that fun stuff, some gear reviews, those kind of things. And that's all going to be in one hub, and it's all free for the user just to come and just gather that information so they can have a greater experience, a more adventurous experience. And all we say is that we just want better adventures with your dog. That's it. Just better,
Better.
And
Yeah.
and I think everyone would like it to be better for them. and so that's what we're doing. So that's dogpacking.com in a nutshell.
When do you hope to launch it?
That'll be this spring. So probably March we'll see that. So we're busily formatting content on the website now, and you can sign up even now. You can sign up for the newsletter, but the website will be live in March. Yeah, and there's Instagram is out there now, so it's slowly more and more content for people to enjoy. Yeah.
So before that launches, and people are interested in going dog packing or just having a better outdoor experience with their dog, do you have like a top tip or top, like your number one piece of advice for anybody who's looking to maybe go dog packing or just go adventuring with their dog?
I think the top tip is to let the dog if you have expectations, let the dog set those for you. It's real. I think it's like, you have kids. I think you said, like, it's really easy to have these grand goals that you want to accomplish. I think the priority is to, just make sure that your dog is healthy and happy, and tailor the experience to them, because we know our dogs. Some dogs aren't ready to run as much as Mira is, for example. If you have a little pug, they're not going to run. They're going to be cute as hell, but they're not going to run as much as she is. So,
and you can carry it more easily because it's lighter, so there's an advantage there. But yeah. And some dogs don't like water as much as other dogs, or those kind of things. So that's all I would say, is just adjust your expectations to your dog. Yeah, that's a good overriding one. Perfect.
Mira.
Oh, is she ready to make an appearance?
Well, I'm trying to get her to come over here, but she keeps going outside. I think she's going to come here. Yeah. Hey, Mira, come here, baby. Hi. Come on up. Oh,
come say hi, Mira. Come say hi.
Hi.
Oh, hey, friend. I know you from the internet. Internet.
The camera's there. We go.
Hey. She's beautiful. She is such a well-behaved dog, and I think it just speaks to y'all's relationship and how much time, care, and attention you've spent developing that relationship. Man, she is just such a well-behaved dog. It's so impressive. Yeah, it's amazing. I love it. And like you said, they're very smart, so it's really on the owner to take the initiative and teach the dog, what the boundaries are, like you said, and enforce them and be consistent the same way you do with kids. That's my relationship to this, is like, it's our job as parents to be the enforcement, be the guide, be the leader, and give the pathway, and be consistent with it.
Yeah, I think it's real. It's a whole journey of that kind of thing, to see what you can do. And with kids, it's obviously a deeper, broader kind of thing. But yeah, it probably shares a lot of similarities to it.
I don't know. There's some people, the way I see them love their dogs, I think it's pretty close. I really do. I mean, they call them fur babies for a reason. So I think there's a lot of, I don't know, but I do sometimes wonder, like, the love that you have for that animal, how closely does it equate for the love of your child, the love of a child, and I wouldn't surprise me if some people, it's very close.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably hard to just to finish that off. It's probably hard to quantify love, and they do say love is love, but it's a rewarding experience to have a dog in your life. But that's Anyway.
Yeah. World tour. This is huge, man. I've got some questions, but first off, I mean, you touched on it beforehand, but I know you have a more granular plan. So can you take us through exactly what your overall goal is, what the overall plan is, and where are you at right now into your world tour? Catch us up to speed.
Yeah. So basically, I'm still in the North American continent. That's been kind of an ongoing thing. We did have a pandemic and the world gone crazy for a little while there, which sort of affected that. But over this initial time period, like including the Tour Divide, Mira and I have crossed the United States, north or south, I think 6 times now. And we've done, we've ridden the length of Baja 3 times, and we've gone, through Europe and a bunch of other stuff. So now we're, or at least I am, I don't know what her opinion is on it, but, now I'm really focused. It's time. If this is going to happen, it's now. So basically, what the project is, and it started incrementally, but this is what it is now, is I want to ride all 7 continents. Typically, people ride sort of in this orientation around the world, but I kind of want to ride this orientation mostly. But so there's 7 continents that are. It's widely accepted there are 7 continents on this world, and I want to ride to all 7 of them. So right now, I've ridden from Canmore, Alberta, Canada, which is where I would call home in Canada, through the United States and in here to Mexico. We just did a little trip. Videos are coming up now on the Copper Canyons, and then I'm back here in Oaxaca, Mexico, which is pretty far south. And then I'll be riding through Central America, and then hopefully paddling from Panama into Colombia, and then following the length of the Andes down to Ushuaia. So that would be 2 continents, and expect to be another 14 or 15 months to complete the rest of this section of it. And then I'll return north, ride the length of Europe, and then into North Africa. And then that would take me to the end of 2026. And then what I'm planning to do is to return back to Canada for training in the wintertime, mainly to train sort of systems and set up on equipment that will later be used in Antarctica. So I'm planning a fairly, I guess adventurous is maybe the word, sort of, not sure what the exact word is here, but a sizable expedition in Antarctica. It's more than just riding around the pole or riding off the boat and back. And then during that time period for preparation, I think we might return to the Tour Divide, possibly as a form of training. That's really what it was in this first round anyway. And then whether that's successful or not, our plans in Antarctica, then we would have Australia, Oceania, and Asia as our remaining continents. And that would take us into 2030. And then we'll return back to Canada. So it's a bit more than a 5-year plan.
A little bit more. Yeah. Starting in 2023.
Yeah.
So you're
and I hope
a 7-year.
Yeah, exactly. And then I'll continue to share videos on YouTube and posts on Instagram along the way to keep people. And then we have a couple other ways that we want to share it. I have a Google Earth project that I'm going to provide to people so that they can sort of follow along in a more multimedia way. And so that's what the plan is. So it's
sounds easy.
Too big to think all of in one. It's just, I'm in Mexico. I'm going to ride through Central America, and then just keep the steps going. But the plan is there, and it's been a plan that I've had for a while, and I've only sort of just recently made it more public that we're going to do it. And if whether someone else wants to do something similar or they've already done parts of this, it doesn't. That's fine. They can have their own adventure. If we inspire people to do one, if they want to share information with us, I've already had people from Australia or New Zealand, or I've been offered a pint of Guinness in Ireland.
Good.
So yeah, it's going to be an amazing adventure, I think, and a beautiful learning experience.
Oh man, this is an adventure of a lifetime. But it sounds like you've already had a very adventurous life. So this will just be one more kind of feather in the cap, so to speak. So help me understand. Like, did you start in Canmore, then ride to Banff, and then ride all the way down to Antelope Wells and make the Tour Divide part of it? And now you obviously continue down south into Oaxaca. Like, is that the way it's gone so far?
Yeah, that first part's a little bit messy because I've started from Canmore and I have ridden the Divide and the Western Wildlands route in different seasons even. But this year basically started in Banff on the Grand Depart. We had a bit of a rough go on the Grand Depart, and then came back for an ITT challenge on the Tour Divide about a month later. So rode that to Antelope Wells. And then I took a little bit of a break, and then again, actually went to visit a friend in Patagonia, Arizona, and then rode over to Antelope Wells. And so this leg of the trip will basically be from Patagonia to Patagonia. Yeah, kind of funny. So I've crossed the border at Antelope Wells and then ridden through Chihuahua over to the Copper Canyons, and then ridden through mainland Mexico, through Durango and Zacatecas and all these beautiful states, back here to Oaxaca. And then we're just coming up on the end of a month here, and then I'll continue through Chiapas and into Guatemala, and it's actually mostly east, oddly enough, from here for quite a section before we start to turn south again. And then I'll go as far as a town called Puerto Carti on the Caribbean side of Panama. And then that's pretty much where the road's going to stop until I can, it's either by air or by sea that you get across to South America. So
so you're referring to the Darien Gap that you're trying to avoid and get around? Yeah. So was there ever any thought that you might try to cross the Darien Gap or go through the Darien Gap, or was it always by air or by sea?
I mean, yeah, sure. Like there's some adventurous souls that have done it with a motorcycle or a
The Jeep Cruise,
a Land Rover, a Jeep. Yeah. But, and, like people do migrate through there. But honestly, of the one type of terrain in the world that I don't like, it's jungle. Like they sound beautiful and they look beautiful, but the humidity and the swampiness and the bugs. And then the other thing is just Mira's safety through an area like that. So yeah, on the water, ideally self-propelled. We're trying to work out the logistics on that right now. So that would be the goal. So it was only a brief. Oh yeah, people do cross the Darien Gap, but yeah, right.
I had another guest on the podcast, Philip Crosby, and there's I'm trying to remember the book that he was in, but anyway, it's on the podcast. People can listen to it. But they were riding south and reached the Darien Gap, and it was similar. It's like briefly they asked a couple questions. They were like, that sounds interesting, and that speaks to my adventurous spirit. But they got on a boat, and I think that's what most people do. And there's a lot of good logic and a lot of good common sense to take a boat or take a plane. It seems like.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've made decisions in my life like around risk, and that's mainly what my work has always been involved in, is assessing risk and mitigating it. But I've made decisions where I know like the outcome. The bad outcome is probably death. And those are real rare. Like you don't take those lightly, and nor should you, or cavalier. And I think the Darien Gap is one of those places in the world where that's a real possibility. With the kind of stuff that goes on there these days. So yeah, it's going to be so much nicer to go on a nice sandy beach somewhere and in the Gunayala, like the San Blas Islands, and come into Colombia that way. It'll be much nicer.
Yeah, Philip did say that boat ride was just beautiful and amazing. And he was like, if you ever get a chance, like take that trip. So it also sounds like just a much better experience and an option from a beauty, a safety standpoint, everything. And plus a different modality of travel. Like I've done pack rafting with like whatever with a bike, so put the pack raft on the bike and then you ride to the river and then you get in the Rio Grande and then you put your bike on the boat and you float down and then you swap it out. And as human powered adventurers, just those different modalities of travel, it's exciting. It just speaks to me on every level, man. So I dig it. Yeah.
Super cool. Yeah.
I wanted to talk about Oaxaca just briefly. Oaxaca is a place that is near and dear to my heart. I went for the first time last, December 2022, went back in June of 2023. And, it's easily become my favorite state in the world. I think it's beautiful. And in Doozer's video, you were making a comment like, I might not ever leave here. Like I got to Oaxaca and I just stopped. So what makes, in your experience, like what makes Oaxaca so great? Why have you spent so much time there? And obviously you're moving on and it didn't trap you forever, but what makes Oaxaca special to you?
Oh man, there's a lot of things there. I mean, it's sort of it's one of the cultural hubs of Mexico. So the food here, I mean, what we know as corn, originates in this part of the world, and just so many different foods. The people, as with almost all parts of Mexico, the people are so kind and loving and interested and joyous in their lives. Even though, economically, like there are real struggles for a lot of people in this part of the world and throughout the country. There's that. I mean, there's the food, the people, and then for someone riding a bicycle, particularly bikepacking, the terrain is nearly perfect. I'm just outside of Oaxaca, the city, Oaxaca de Juarez, and I can go out the lane here onto a dirt road, and basically stay on dirt almost the entire time with some very small stuff, and I can ride I think we're sitting here at 1,700 meters. I'm sure you can add the conversions, or people can Google this. But the road tops out at 3,200 meters.
Oh, wow.
So I change. I go up, through these bunch of cactus and sort of scrub type terrain, and then into oaks, and then into a cloud forest full of pines and air plants. So it's it's incredible. And then there's all these little comodores around, so you can get little tiny restaurants that are owned by local people, and you can get traditional food at a good price, and all these market towns. There's just so much here. It's really rich, and it's easy to get to as well. Like, you can fly out of Houston into Oaxaca. It's a lovely, clean, tiny little airport, in and out, and it's wonderful. It's really, and because of the way that the country is, like, there's sort of this isthmus of land that comes through. If throughout the millennia, if any group of people was migrating north or south, this is one of the big valleys they would come through. And so there's a tremendous amount of history and culture here that really informs how people live on a day-to-day basis, and what they eat, and all kinds of things. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's so culturally rich, and it's present in their art, in their architecture, the vibrant colors, the vibrance of the people, the food. I mean, it's a beautiful place. And I think you articulated all those things quite well. One of my favorite stories or reflections from my visit, and this story is just representative of what you said, of like the people who are, even though economically it's a poor region of the world, but everywhere you look, it seems like everybody's happy. And one of my favorite reflections is I woke up early one morning and was just walking to go get some coffee and a bagel or whatever, and it's 6:30 in the morning. The sun is just coming up, and there's three garbage men. I don't know what they call them over there, but they just have big barrels with wheels that they're rolling down, and brooms that are handmade out of like whatever, natural materials that they made a broom out of. And all three of them were laughing and singing and joking, and they were sweeping the fucking road, man. They were picking up trash. But that interaction, or that just observation, I think is indicative of how those people live their life. They could be working just so hard in grueling environments, but it does seem like they always have this spirit of happiness about them, which is infectious. It's just a beautiful people there, and it's so represented in like everything, like I said, food, art, culture, everything.
Yeah. And they express it too with generosity to strangers. Like I'm often invited into people's homes. I was camped not far out of Oaxaca when I was riding down here, and a fellow was harvesting different medicinal plants, and stopped to talk to me, and then came back later in the evening with some drinks and some baked goods, and invited me to his home in the morning for breakfast. And that's not an unusual occurrence here. People are interested and generous to give and share, and it's changed the way that it's definitely changed the way that I move through the world and experience and share time with other people. So I think that's one of the things that I'm getting out of a trip like this, that I would never. I mean, it's nice in Canada. It's a nice country. It's got problems like everywhere else, but I don't think I would have learned that only at home, or it's just too familiar that it wouldn't have been different enough to then be observable to me. Sometimes we're too close to a thing, and we don't appreciate it, how nice it is where we're living. But it's this kind of travel. I think that's really why people, like, there's so many people. Like the Baja Divide is a popular route, and I know there's routes within Europe that are super popular for people to go through, and then throughout the entire United States, there's all kinds. I mean, bikepacking is just a really great way to experience the world. So it's pretty awesome.
Oaxaca, I've tried to not talk about it on the podcast too much. Cass Gilbert's done a great job of creating
Yeah.
routes, and it seems like every time I turn around, like Kate and Andrew Gates from Mulberry Gap, they're there right now riding with Logan Watts from bikepacking.com. Someone left a review on the Angus Morton episode, like an iTunes review, and it was just saying, "Hey, great episode. We're about to," and then just adjacent to that, they were like, "We're about to leave for Oaxaca on a bikepacking trip." And it just seems like every time I turn around, someone's going to Oaxaca. I mean, I think the secret's out. So I might be part of the problem in letting that secret out. You're part of the problem too, and so is Doozer.
Yeah, don't fight it. It's all here. I mean, and it's amazing if you're like how it occurred for Ryan and I. We had ridden a bunch of the GDMBR together, and we had such a great time. And while we were doing it, we thought, I mean, people race this thing, man. Like that's crazy. And we thought, well, maybe we might do it one time. And when we were riding the San Jose del Pacifico loop that Cass has published on bikepacking.com, we thought about that. We thought, well, maybe when I'm done with Argentina, we'll race it. You know, we'll enter at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I once he left, I was like, why am I waiting? This is the perfect place to train for it. The weather is ideal. The terrain is ideal. I'm already here, and I had been delayed. I'd waited for the rainy season. Then friends got married, and then Ryan came down. So I was here much longer than I had planned. And I thought, well, what's 5.5 or 6 more months? I'll stay here and I'll train for the Tour Divide. And so, yeah, it's great. Like, don't hide it. People can come on down here and experience it any time of year. Even rainy season is still good riding down here. It's pretty amazing.
Well, let's give some people some advice, including myself. So Natalie and I, my girlfriend and I, we're planning a bike packing trip this fall in Oaxaca, and we're trying to decide on a route. And I know you've ridden both of these. So one of them is the San Jose del Pacifico, the Grand Dirt Tour, which we've mentioned. And also that's the video that you and Ryan Van Duzer made together on YouTube. It's like a 5-part series. Very well done, worth checking out for people who are interested. And then there's this other route, and the Grand Dirt Tour is the one it seems like everybody does. It's like, it seems to be like the holy grail of riding out of Oaxaca, specifically Oaxaca de Juarez. But what about this other one? And I'm gonna butcher the name, so please help me with it. But La Vuelta a las Pueblos Mancomunidades. Fuck, man.
Yeah. Will
you say it the right way? Will you say it the right way?
Huh? I would say it's La Vuelta de Comunidades, or was it
Pueblos
Mancomunidades?
Yeah.
I've already butchered it. Yeah,
good.
they can read it on there.
I'm in good company.
Yeah. Well, it depends how much time you have. So the way I see what Cass has put there, there's a bunch of tours. That's one of them. And there's a few others. There's one right through this village that I'm staying in, San Pablo, through an area called Ixtepeje that he has up in the mountains. So these both kind of are up in the same area. You could do multiple tours, multiple different loops, and then return back to Oaxaca, or sort of into the region. You can sort of reset and do. I think I'm not sure what he has them down there as sort of 3-day tours, possibly. So you could do a couple of 3-day tours. Mm-hmm. The San Jose one is a little bit longer. It's sort of typically 6-7 days, or if you're training for the Tour Divide, it's 2 days. And it's pretty cool because you go through both of these, you gain a lot of elevation, but you go through many more communities in that route. And so you don't need to carry as much food, and you have a lot of those interactions on a regular basis. But I mean, just stay longer and do them all. That's what I would say. I mean, honestly, really, they're all great. What I would say is definitely have a low range of gears for the climbs, and then be a little patient on them. And you're going to have a great time.
That was one of the things I told
maybe
Natalie. I was like, when we're watching the video you and Doozer did together. And I told her, I was like, I know Doozer. Doozer is in phenomenal shape. He lives in either Boulder or Denver. Like he lives at elevation.
Boulder,
and I mean, he is in phenomenal shape as an ultra runner, as a cyclist, a bike packer. And he's struggling on those hills. We live in Texas. We live at sea level. So that was a good indication of like, yeah, bring some fitness and bring some gears for sure, because the hills are no joke.
No, they're not. I mean, you can spend hours and hours. You can spend your whole day just climbing.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, they're really rewarding. Like when you get to the top, or even the little views you get on the way up, or there'll be a community part way along, and you can stop and get some great food. That's a hard one to choose these things. Cass has done a great job, and of course the platform bikepacking.com to be able to easily download those, put them onto your head unit, and follow along. It's great, and you could just use them as a template too. Like, right. If you can turn off and there's just so much to see down here. So you will not choose wrong if you have those things to choose from. You're gonna have a great time.
I'm not worried, and I know that I will go back, and I will go back, and I will go back, and maybe I'll be a Cat Gilbert and get stuck there one day, or maybe I'll be like you and permanently get stuck there. That's one of my dreams is after I'm done raising kids, I might find myself there for a considerable amount of time. So
I mean, it's not a bad place to raise kids.
Well, I got ex-wives, so I got to convince.
Okay.
It's a messy web that would have to. I just like you considered the Darien Gap. I also was like, how can I convince them to everybody move to Oaxaca? But we'll have to table that. And there's lots of other cool things to do. And this is a good season of life, and that could be a future good season of life.
There you go.
So speaking about routes, how did you develop your world tour route? And, what is your process? How strict are you to a route? Are you kind of making it up as you go? You're like, okay, I'm going to go from here to here. Like, what is your process of creating this route and this massive world tour route?
Basically, like, it's my route to ride, and it's not like there are any rules per se that are set by someone else. Basically, I just wanted to ride as much dirt as possible. I want to go, or at least off pavement route, and I want to get to all continents. And there's also, people have done a lot of work in publishing some really amazing routes, and so when I can use those along the way. But I'm basically just doing it in sections. So it's, right now I'm more or less just riding south, and I'm integrating published routes that seem interesting or align with where I'm going. I like to ride more in the mountains than I do maybe in a coastal region. And I'll try and integrate those when I can, particularly if they're a point-to-point route. But even if they're a loop, I could do a portion of it, because that might, bring me into a culturally interesting area or some back roads that I might not be able to easily find on my own. But it's really, and if there are some places that are destinations, I'll try to include those. But really, it's the journey. I mean, I love going through a village or even a city early in the morning and seeing people get ready for their days. Just living their lives. It's just kind of this really interesting insight into how they live their lives. But I don't necessarily need to go see, a piece of architecture or some place necessarily. So it really is pretty loose. I obviously followed the Tour Divide route, and then sort of piece together my own thing towards the Copper Canyons. And then even in the Copper Canyons, there's really not a great published route of a loop to go and experience that. And even talking to locals, they're sort of, unsure of where bikepackers can go and where they can't go and how that's going to work out for them. So I've just been finding my own way and using apps like Komoot and Map Out and Google Earth to find my way through. And then there's basically sort of there are some definite beginning and ends to certain sections. So, I was living in Canmore, Alberta. So that's been the start of the ride. I've ridden the Tour Divide, and then there'll be this, route that takes me through Central America, but there will be an end to the road, which is, for me, it's going to be Puerto Carti in Panama. And then, this little town called Turbo in Colombia is kind of like the closest place where the road starts again that I can make it by boat. And so from there, then it'll be, I want to go to Medellin, I want to go to Cali, I want to go to Bogota. And there's places that I've worked at and climbed at in both Ecuador and Bolivia, and I'd like to see those again. But this time by bicycle, so those kind of things. And then some of the big cities, the La Paz, the Quito, Lima, Santiago, to get into Mendoza. And then, so there are these sort of places where I'll go. And then, and then I'd love to go in Europe. There's all these places where I've been invited to go see, and there's places where I've been before. And, I'd love to go and visit the Pinion factory in Germany and those kind of things. See where some of the bike components, because I think they host some tours from time to time. And there's like the European divide, to be able to integrate that. But through North Africa, there's not a great wealth of routes. So it becomes my own exploring. I like going where there's no tire tracks. That's really a lot of fun. I mean, I think that's the thing about the Baja Divide that always drives me a little batty, is just seeing all the tire tracks now. And it's like, everyone's enjoying it. They're loving it. And that part's great. But I like going where there's no tire tracks. Yeah. And you can still find that here in Oaxaca, oddly enough. There's not that many people coming down. So yeah, it's a mix of, there's places I want to go see and then routes that people already had done. And I can kind of use those and download them and then use them and then link my own path in there. And then of course I have to, choose places wisely, for Mira. Like there's parts of Africa, or just other parts of the world that are either culturally not as accepting of dogs as pets, or there's hazards, other wildlife, for example. I'm used to bears being in the area, but I'm not used to, maybe big cats or other things that might parts of the world that might exist. So yeah, it's it'll be interesting to see how it develops this route. Yeah.
Yeah. So how much of the route is set in stone, and how much of it are you figuring out? Like you get to Oaxaca and then you say, okay, now I'm going to plan the next 500 miles. Like, how are you building the route? I assume you got like a pretty loose idea, but then you got to research each specific one. Local feedback is usually a good way to get that kind of stuff. Like, what's that process like?
Yeah. Local feedback's a weird thing.
They're not bike packers, right? Or dog packers. So
no. And in Mexico, like in a lot of parts of the world, people are pretty provincial. Like they know their own little area, but not in like cyclists really know the cities they live in like more than almost anyone else. And the areas they travel through, they see them at a speed that allows them to see the detail, but cover great distances. So yeah, what I've experienced is that either people are illiterate when it comes to reading a map. Like not everyone can read a map. They can't read a paper map, and they can't use something like Google very easily. So seeing these colored lines on a small phone screen isn't always that useful. And people sometimes can't identify the roads that they live on. in these maps. So you really have to be careful asking for directions. And then what I've also experienced is that people sometimes they're really concerned for your safety. So they don't want to give you advice that could put you at risk. So they're reluctant to provide you with information to go into areas that there might be hazards on. So that can be, or they're just wrong, right? Like the road's dead flat, and then there's these massive hills when you actually go to ride it, that kind of thing. So I ask a variety of people, but so what's going to happen now is I'll probably follow or loosely follow the Trans-Mexico southern portion of it to get me to the border with Guatemala, because it's going the way that I want to go anyway. And there's, I'll a lot of it's on pavement, but I'll sort of find some more dirt, and then I'll use an app like Komoot in Guatemala to go to the places that I want to see. There are some archaeological sites that I want to go visit, and I'll plug those in and use its features to then plot a route through based upon my fitness level and the kind of riding I want to do, or the terrain I want to do. And then I'll take a good look at it and see if I can see it on Google Earth, that if it looks, reasonable, and kind of go like that through. And then, meeting people they'll recommend, going to a place and that sort of thing.
Sounds like a real adventure.
Areas that I should go.
Real adventure.
There's a lot of unknown in the route, but as long as I keep moving forward, that's the main thing. Just keep on.
Adventure starts in the unknown.
Keep it on.
Adventure's on the other side of the unknown, right?
Yeah. The one place that'll be very different from that would be Antarctica. Yeah, Antarctica is a much more controlled, regulated situation where, there's rescue insurance required. There's flights that are being booked. There's food drops being booked. There's a requirement to phone in to the operator there and tell them where you are and what your bearing is for the following period of movement, and you need to contact them every 24 hours. And after a certain period, then a rescue plan would be enacted. And food drops are going to be very specific where they are, and they're very expensive to have done. All the logistics of that, equipment, time, flights. That's very regulated. Even how you deal with your garbage and your feces, as you approach the pole, or it's so that'll be a very different and unique part of the trip. But the rest of it's pretty free form.
That Antarctica section, I can't even imagine. You're a wild man. You're a wild man. I like it.
We'll see.
Let's talk about your Tour Divide. We've been talking for a while, but are you good on time?
Yeah, I'm fine.
You're not going to kick me off yet? All right. Well, I wanted to hear about your Tour Divide. You are the first person to ever complete the Tour Divide as a dog-human team. Are you the first person to ever attempt it that you know of, or just the first to complete it?
Well, I suspect both. I mean, I did, like you do, you check the internet. Bonnie, who runs the Facebook page that sort of talks, Tour Divide and GDMBR, and there's a Tour Divide specific Facebook group, and then the folks doing the tracking, they gave us our own color of icon, which was super cool, and our own little category on the list. And no one has said, oh, so-and-so attempted this, or so-and-so completed this with their dog on this year. So it appears that that's probably the case, as far as I can tell, because everything about the Tour Divide is officially unofficial.
Right.
So it's a real strange entity, which I'm sure, which you have explored on the podcast.
Sure.
But it was, I did it partly, one was just as a challenge, but also to rekindle my excitement and energy around this trip. I was feeling a little flat because I'd been stationary in Oaxaca for a while, and it did, like all the preparation for it, the event itself. One of the things I didn't expect was the people that I met during the Grand Depart, like what people might not realize if they haven't taken part in the event is just how much effort and energy people put, like people from all over the world. They're taking time off work. They're spending great deals of money to travel there, their equipment, negotiation with their life partners, with work, to come and do this, to really challenge themselves, to do something that's really hard. And even that's admirable and unique. That's the thing that I was really struck by. I was really in awe of the other competitors that were on the Grand Depart. I didn't expect that. And that was really beautiful to witness. Just, and people of all fitness levels doing their own thing. Obviously not as fast as the people at the sharp end of it. But yeah, no, it was really cool to be part of that.
You mentioned earlier some kind of debacle or a rough start with the Grand Depart, which forced you to have to come back later and do it as an ITT. Can you talk about what happened?
Yeah, I think, it just boils down to being a newbie, okay. Really. So I started the Grand Depart. I had kind of a schedule in mind, which was pretty aggressive in terms of distance per day. And so our first day ended in Fernie. And basically what things that were kind of a surprise for me was just how much time I actually spend stopped, like Mira jumping into the basket, which was probably something that was, identifiable during training, but I never really picked up on it. Like I said, because, people like Ryan will slow down or stop, but if you're riding near another rider and you get to the top of a hill and they keep going and you stop, all of a sudden you realize. So like riding to Fernie on that first day, I think it ended up being like it ended up being close to 2 hours of stop time just for Mira to get into the basket. So that was kind of an interesting thing. Then what also because there was so much in and out because of the terrain, she developed a bit of a limp on day 2. And then so I just put her in the basket for almost all of the climbs from then on, right through until Whitefish. And so by the time I got to Helena, I could barely walk. My knees were, add 50 pounds to your bike and see how your knees,
thank you.
Start to speak to you. So my knees were in a great deal of pain. And I think I would have kept going, but I had a brand new hub, a silent freewheel hub that seized up during the event as well. And so what it was doing was like part of the clutch mechanism in it had failed. It turns out it cleared quality control. It's been warranted, but so I had this hub that was pushing the drive unit forward. On a regular bike with a derailleur, it just would have ripped the derailleur right off your bike. But with the pinion, the ring, and so that's creating more and more friction. And I got down as far as I'd passed through Butte and could see Fleecer Ridge up in the distance, shadowed in rain. And I was like, man, I got this bike that might fail and leave me walking on a bad knee. And Mira at that point had recovered. She was able to get out. And I just thought that this doesn't make any sense, a bad idea. So I pulled the pin at that point, which at the time it was just the right decision. I didn't feel bad about it. I was like, well, it's I can either go and people have made bad decisions about whether and been rescued on the Tour Divide. And I just didn't, so it was, all things, it's hard to leave an event you put so much time and effort into. And so after recovering a little bit and feeling a bit better, I thought, well, I do have the time. I've put in the effort, the equipment is in place. And so I just reset to do an ITT and contacted the folks with the track leaders, and they're like, yeah, no problem. You can feel free to do it again and turn on your inReach. And so then I went with a much more modest approach to just finish. And so something approximating about 100 miles a day, finish the thing and be done. So but even then, every single day, I learned something new. It was about myself, or about the setup, or about how to manage Mira's energy, or it's a pretty amazing event.
That's surprising. You learn something new every single day, in that you've been doing this for a while with your other dog, and now Mira. What was so different about the Tour Divide that taught you so much?
I mean, I think it's just the intensity of it. How much, how to manage your water, what happens, how much sleep do you need? What 15 minutes, laying down, how much better you feel after 15 minutes of sleep, getting back on your bike and riding again, or where I put little things on the bicycle. It just seemed like so much of it meant just my mental approach to riding. All of those things have now changed the way that I approach this ride. I think also feels like, I've stretched myself, and I've done hard things in my life, but it just feels like, particularly around this has stretched or changed my perception of us riding, and how much I need to be comfortable, and it was just pretty incredible. And then just seeing the reaction to my body, I was like trying to eat 300 calories an hour, and so you'd buy these frozen burritos, and you're like, oh, that's 300 calories, and you wait for them to thaw out, so it's and then just watching myself. I don't do well with sleep deprivation generally, but this event, you're gonna have some of that, and just seeing how I managed that was quite interesting. And then trying to manage, the real challenge for me was managing Mira's energy. So we would get to a point in the day, say in Colorado, where you can clearly see she's getting tired, which is a rare thing for me to see on a regular basis. And then realize, well, if we're going to climb this pass, she's going to be in the basket. And can I manage that? Am I going to, my knees going to act up again, or how to kind of deal with that? And so it's just problem solving all the time in that kind of thing. So it's really interesting way to travel.
What about your experience of, I get the sense through talking with you that you ride primarily, I won't say alone because you're with Mira, but primarily with Mira. What was your experience like? Did you prefer the experience of the group start and having other riders? And, mentally, I could see it being a little bit of a drag to just see how much more quickly they're traveling versus you are. Or did you prefer the ITT? Do you have a preference there?
I definitely preferred the ITT, but not for the reason you think. One is like, in my late teens, early 20s, I used to race bicycles, like mainly road and track. And so it's really hard for me not to be racing everyone, as opposed to going, to the clock or metering out my own energy. So that also, I think, added to our problems during the Grand Depart. But the other thing which is really challenging for me to manage was just the outpouring of interest and love for us on the event was overwhelming. Mm-hmm. I think, in Helena was probably the apex of it. Because we didn't continue much past that anyway, but, there were people on the side of the road, they had signs. I was with some other riders in a restaurant, and people came into the restaurant. I grabbed a hotel in town that night. People came to the hotel. There was sign like the next day, like even at like 6 a.m, people are out there cheering us on, and yeah, that was pretty
That's
intense. And
incredible.
then like his name just escapes me at the moment. There was an excellent recap on YouTube for the event.
Oh, Josh
And
Isbit.
yes, thank you. Yeah, he's doing a great job. And I think video number 3, it was so funny that I've seen, which is that, the race is developed. There's, 3 people contesting for the sort of the very front end of the event. And it seems like that'll be what will continue on. And, but he says something like, but no one cares because they all want to know how Mira and John are doing. And
Yeah.
I thought that was adorable. That was
Yeah.
great. So that was, yeah. So the ITT was much easier from that kind of output to manage versus the Grand Depart. But there's something special about, because you got to manage all the logistics. You come into a town and you think you're going to grab a hotel, but if you're a mid-pack rider, the hotels are booked, right?
Mhm.
Even a town like Fernie, for example, like there's it's not just Tour Divide riders coming through. That's regular business. And if you're in a small town like Eureka, Montana, or any of these towns along the Tour Divide, there's a good chance the hotels are booked. So being able to manage that on your own is it's not easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes you
What
just want
was
to
your,
shower in a bed.
Oh God, I can only imagine. Yeah. What was your official time? What's the fastest
That's a really good
time for
question.
dogpacking the Tour Divide?
I think we're 28 days and change. I think we averaged, it ended up being 96 miles a day, I think was the average.
Okay.
We had a couple sort of lost days with a damaged tire, and then a short day out of Helena. But then a bunch of days that were in excess of 100 miles to try and get closer and closer to that. But yeah, I think it's over 27 days, but not a lot over.
Do you have a,
so yeah.
You said you learned a lot from this experience. It was, you said every day you learn something new. So, I think you said it was, do you say 2020? When did you say you're going back? 2026 or 2027? And I'm wondering, like,
27. Yeah. So I'll be in the winter time in Canada, and then probably I'll make a little training camp somewhere warm to get ready for the event. But yeah, I'd like to do it again.
What do you have, a ride goal, a time goal, or what would be your goal for the next attempt?
I mean, I would love to do it, in less than 3 weeks, sub 21 days, sub 20 days. I'd like to be of a time that is respectable for a fit rider without a dog. That's where I would like to be.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be a few years older. So yeah, who knows? And Mira will be older. But the main goal, of course, will be to finish it with a decent style, and to embrace the experience of doing something hard. I think that's a good thing to do. So the process is probably more important than the end goal in the whole thing. So I learned so much on that first round that I could use in the second round. It never felt like a failure. And I think in the past I may have, viewed something like that as a failure. But I no longer do, which is pretty awesome. It's pretty freeing, actually. So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
As you get older, at least as I've gotten older, I've stopped, and I talked about this I was interviewed for another podcast and we got into this topic, but if you start to look at failures as not failures, but opportunities to learn, then they really aren't failures. They're only failures if you choose not to take action on whatever you learn from that experience. But failure is just a teacher. That's an opportunity to learn what you were blind to, what you didn't know, where you needed to train, whatever it may be. But in that way, it's not a failure. The failure is if you don't do anything with the information that you gathered from that experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so much of that in life where people, you know, like whether it's self-help industry, people are just gaining more and more information. But if you don't actually do a thing, it's just an imagining of it. And it just sucks to go through your life counting up all the number of failures that you have because you didn't continue trying to find a way through, to find a solution. And that's where the magic and the joy happens, right? You know,
yeah.
you get a mechanical or a upset stomach on one of these rides, or, you know, in my case, I could have a visa issue, or, you know, I don't have the right documentation for Mira to cross the border, even though stray dogs are passing throughout the day. I somehow need to have documentation for Mira's vaccinations to cross the same border.
That's
yeah, I'm just going to adapt and learn and sort it out. And I'm very confident if you just approach it in that way, that more things will work out in your favor than not.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
It only stops working out if you stop moving forward. And then, you know, but other than that, it's just a part of the process. It's a part of the journey. It only stops when you stop.
Yeah. I mean, I feel really good that we reset and we didn't finish the event, but that we started again. And I was lucky that I've made choices to be able to provide myself with that time and those resources. But yeah, I mean, it would have been easy for someone to go throw their teddy in the corner and pout and not do it. But yeah, that's you know, something that I'll take with me throughout this trip too. We'll just continue moving forward.
Absolutely. I love it, John. Tell people where they can follow you. You're on YouTube, you're on social media. People are going to want to watch all your videos and they're going to want to follow you on your world tour. So where can they find you?
Yeah, please. Thank you. So we are on Instagram in two places at Mira La Pera with little underscores between the words. So that actually translates to Mira or look the dog, Mira the dog, or Omni Tierra, one word, on Instagram. And then they can also find us on either through the link in the bio on Instagram or go to YouTube and it's Omni Tierra is the channel. Or if you search Dogpacking, you'll come up with us. And now our latest endeavor is going to be at dogpacking.com. So this spring they can find out, you know, how it is that we do what we do, and anything else that you want to find out about your dogs, you know, about health issues or inspiration for dog activities, then dogpacking.com is a great place to go. So yeah, those are the four main places to come and see what we're doing.
Yeah, I love it. I genuinely, I love what you guys are doing. You're putting out great content. It's, you can't not fall in love with Mira. It's impossible. And with you as her owner, like I said, the bond that y'all have is really special, and it really comes through in your content. And, you know, I love, showing people unique ways to live their life and unique ways to adventure. And you're certainly in that category. So I appreciate everything you're doing, man. And equally, I enjoyed this chat. It's been great chatting with you. I thank you for coming on the show and sharing all your expertise and your time and your stoke with me and my audience. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, likewise. And I know other guests have said this before, but the platform that you're providing and the way that you're providing it here is pretty amazing. Like, for someone to consume the content, and it's been enjoyable to be here on the podcast and to be included in the alumni of this podcast is, I was like, yeah, it's impressive. So thank you for this.
Well, I think what I hope I do is showcase the different modalities of way to access the outdoors. And so that's important to me, whether you're going fast or whether you're going slow or taking your dog or taking your kid. Showcasing the different ways that you can access the outdoors is something that's really passionate, important to me. So you're definitely, you're in the upper echelons there, my friend. So I'd say you're in good company on the podcast, and yeah, it's been enjoyable. I'll look forward to watching you on your adventure, and certainly wish you like best travels, man. It's going to be quite the adventure, and I'd love to have you back on, maybe at some different stages during your tour. And, I don't know, we can chit chat about how that might look, but I'd love to touch base with you again once you're kind of deeper into this, or, it's several years. So we could probably have a couple different conversation over the years if you were keen on it.
Yeah, I'm super keen on it. We'll make sure that Mira gets some more screen time as well for people that want to see that she really exists.
All right. Sounds good, John. Well, enjoy your day, man. And we'll talk to you again one day, hopefully soon.
Yeah, super. Thanks for your time. Right. I appreciate it.
Good times.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. And another big shout out goes to John and Mira for coming on and sharing their wealth of information and their inspiration with us. And again, I wish them safe travels and fun travels in their tour across the world. Now, the astute listener among you may remember that today's episode was supposed to be with Jambi, but we were scheduled to record an episode, and a couple hours before, she messaged me and said she was in the hospital because, if you don't know, she was at that time in labor and giving birth to a child. And she had said, I think I'm going to be busy around 8 a.m., but I could probably do it a little bit later. So I'm interested to get the behind the scenes to see if she was planning to do it from the hospital or what she was thinking. But I'm happy to report that there is now a baby Jambi in the world. And I am so happy for her. I'm wishing her all the good thoughts and hoping that she's doing well and enjoying being a new mother. And we are definitely going to be recording that episode in the future, but obviously I'm not going to put any pressure on that to happen at any time. So I told her whenever she's ready, I am more than excited to chat with her. And I know that she's excited to come on and chat too. But I'm not sure exactly when that episode is going to air. So that's something that we'll all just get to look forward to in the future. Well, I appreciate you being here. If you enjoyed today's episode and you would like to support this podcast, the best way to do that is by signing up to be a sustaining member over at patreon.com/bikesfordeath, where you can sign up to support the show for as little as $1 a month. And I say it all the time, but we cannot produce these episodes without your support. We have 312 patrons currently supporting the show, and they make up the lion's share of financial support to produce these shows. So I really appreciate that. And if you would like to help support our efforts, support the podcast, and support what we're doing, Patreon is a great way to do that. Another great way to support the show is through our affiliate links. I spent some time this last week adding some new affiliates to our affiliate page. So if you'd like to check those out, you can go to bikesfordeath.com, and at the very top of the homepage, there is a link for our affiliates. Some of those affiliate links include discounts special for you, the listener. But no matter what link you click, every time you use one of our links, a small commission is sent to Bikes for Death, and we really appreciate that. So if you're thinking about doing some shopping, that's a great way to get new bike or outdoor gear for yourself and support the Bikes for Death podcast. Mostly, I just want to thank you all for being here. It is an absolute pleasure, and I can't wait to be back in your podcasting feed with another amazing episode very soon. Until then, you know what to do. Go ride your damn bike.
It was the middle of the night. You grabbed your knife and you held it tight. The sounds of beasts kept you awake. The sounds they made kept you afraid. In the morning, you packed your bike. Memories forgotten from the previous night. You rode faster than ever before. Was it your imagination or merely folklore. Fear turns into strength as you push further. Every pedal stroke, stronger and firmer. Your bike feels weightless, your legs aren't tired. You think to yourself, just a few more miles. Bikes. Oh, damn.